To enjoy this episode of Forensic Tales ad-free, check us out on Patreon. Patreon.com/Forensic Tales.
Forensic Tales discusses topics that some listeners may find disturbing. The contents of this episode may not be suitable for everyone. Listener discretion is advised.
It's a story that's been called by the media the Black Swan Murder, in reference to the 2010 psychological thriller Black Swan. In September 2020, Ashley Benefield, a former ballerina and swimsuit model, walked to her neighbor's house in Lakewood Ranch, Florida, and said that she shot her husband, Doug Benefield, in self-defense. But prosecutors disagreed, and 4 years later, she was put on trial for his murder. What does the forensic evidence say about what really happened? This is Forensic Tales, episode number 244, The Ashley Benefield Story. In 2016, Ashley met Doug Benefield at a Republican Party fundraiser in Palm Beach, Florida, during the 2020 presidential campaign. She was 24 and he was 54. After knowing each other for just 13 days, they tied the knot and got married. But as the saying goes, age is nothing but a number. He just immediately thought Ashley was the most beautiful, the most amazing person in the world, said writers for Vanity Fair. Ashley was working in Donald Trump's campaign office in Sarasota, Florida. She was tall, beautiful, someone who easily stood out in a crowd. Doug was a consultant from Charleston, South Carolina, a former Navy pilot who worked with technology companies and defense contractors. He was described by the Post and Courier as a serial entrepreneur always looking for the next project. Despite the 30-year age gap, they bonded over things like their shared conservative values and love of firearms. Even the night they first met, Ashley was said to have at least one gun on her, a small detail that would eventually come full circle in their whirlwind romance. Ashley's job for the Trump campaign was to help with the political rallies. It was during the height of the presidential campaign, so most people who worked for Donald Trump were stationed to organize these rallies all across the country. Ashley seemed really proud to have this job. In her diaries, she wrote about what it was like to meet Donald Trump for the very first time. She said they were on a plane together when he, quote, showered her with compliments. Aside from American politics, there was a whole different side to Ashley. She was a former swimsuit model and a dancer with the Maryland Youth Ballet. Others in the world of professional dance described her as a very well-trained dancer. And she looked every bit the part. She was beautiful with long dark brown hair. She was thin and tall, built just like a picture-perfect ballerina. Just days after they met at the dinner party, Doug left the country on a business trip. But during that entire trip, the two exchanged messages and emails back and forth. And they weren't just your casual messages between friends who just met. Within just a matter of a few days, Doug and Ashley were saying things like, I love you, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you. 3 days later, Doug popped the question. He asked Ashley to marry him. But this wasn't Doug's first time proposing. His first wife was to a woman named Renee, but she died from an undiagnosed heart condition just 9 months earlier. Doug and Renee also had a daughter together, Eva, who was 15 at the time her dad met Ashley. Eva was even the one who sadly found her mom dead when she came home from school one day. In an interview with the show 48 Hours, she said this about what that was like. Quote, I couldn't get in through the front door and she wasn't answering the doorbell or the knock, so I crawled through these bushes, end quote. She then said she looked through the blinds into her parents' bedroom, and that's where she found her mom, just lying on the bedroom floor. From the moment Renee Benefield died, Doug was right by Eva's side. He sort of took on both roles, a mom and a dad, which is exactly what she needed. A girl who's just 14 or 15 needs her parents. While Doug and Ashley might have been blinded by their own whirlwind romance, not everyone was as excited as they were. According to CBS News, Doug didn't even tell his daughter right away about the proposal. In fact, she didn't know about it until after they were legally married on paper. And when he finally did, she wasn't exactly thrilled about having a new mother figure in her life less than a year after her own mother died, especially someone who probably seemed more like a sister than a mother. Doug's friends also had their concerns about the relationship. They wondered, can you really get to know someone after just 2 weeks? But ultimately, they all supported him and they all wanted what was best for him. If Ashley made him happy and he wanted to marry her, then so be it. They knew that he just lost Renee, and I don't think anyone wanted to see him alone. So his friends and family were there to support him. But in a strange twist, Doug invited almost no one to the wedding, not even his teenage daughter. Instead, they got married in a private ceremony by Doug's close friend, Trip Comery, who was an ordained minister at the time, and Ashley moved in. Things at the Benefield house got even more complicated after they allowed Eva's friend Sydney to also move into the house after their secret wedding. So picture this. You've got a house with 2 teenage girls, a stepmother who was only about 10 years older than they were. Most people would probably say that that's a recipe for disaster. And if you're one of them, then you'd be right. At first, there were just small arguments here and there. A teenage daughter and her friend revolting against their new young stepmom. But the fights kept getting worse and worse until one of them involved a gun. Doug's best friend told the show 48 Hours that during one of these blow-ups between Ashley and the 2 girls, Doug discharged one of his guns into the ceiling of the house just to get everyone to calm down. Now, according to the friend, Doug would later regret this, saying that it was one of the biggest mistakes of his entire life. But as we're soon to find out, this wouldn't be the first or the last time a gun was brought out during an argument. 2 days after the gun incident, Doug and Ashley threw themselves a formal wedding reception, this time inviting all their friends and family. Around this same time, Ashley went to Doug with an idea. She wanted to start her own dance company. As a former professional dancer herself, Ashley had talked Doug into starting an inclusive ballet company. She specifically wanted to attract dancers from all different backgrounds, every shade, color, and body type. Not just the stereotypical ballerina bodies that you pretty much see everywhere else. Now, Doug was a little hesitant about the idea at first because he knew virtually nothing about the dance business. But this wasn't his first rodeo. He was by all accounts a pretty successful businessman and serial entrepreneur. If a good idea presented itself to him, then he usually took it and ran with it. So he agreed to go along with his new wife's plan, and they created the American National Ballet in Charleston in 2017. She would be the brains behind the operation, and he would write the checks to fund it. After American National Ballet was officially created, they hired ballet master Michael Wise to train all the incoming dancers. And by the summer of 2017, roughly 45 dancers from all over the country began arriving in Charleston to join A&B. Most of the dancers were just like Ashley. They had the drive, they had the work ethic to become a great dancer, but they were simply never given the opportunity or the chance. But things were about to crash and burn. Within just a few weeks of opening its doors, the company started having problems. Things weren't exactly as they expected them to be when the dancers first got there. Most of them wanted to meet Ashley right away, the woman behind the magic, but they were told they couldn't. That's because right around the same time that A&B was created, Ashley and Doug found out that they were pregnant. So when the dancers showed up in Charleston, anxious to come face to face with the company's creator, they were told she was on bed rest because the pregnancy was hard on her. And that wasn't the only red flag. The dancers were also told that they would be provided proper dance shoes, something that is pretty standard for most ballet companies. You provide your dancers with dance shoes. But that fell through. they were told that only half the allotment had arrived. So that meant that only half the dancers got shoes and the other half didn't. Then there was the issue of getting paid. The dancers' checks were often late, if they arrived at all. Now, most of the dancers thought that things would improve once Ashley came back, but she never did. By the end of August, Ashley had moved back to Florida to stay with her mom because her pregnancy had only gotten harder. This meant that Doug was left behind in Charleston all by himself to keep the dance company afloat. He was also trying to keep his marriage to Ashley afloat. In an article for CBS News, Eva said that she felt like Ashley was taking away her best friend being her father, the same man that had become basically both a mom and a dad to her. But Doug was committed to making everything work. He wanted his new bride to be happy, but he also wanted his only child to be happy as well. So he did his best that he could to make everything happen. But he just couldn't stop the ticking time bomb. 1 month later in September, while Doug was at an event for the ballet company, Ashley and her mom drove from Florida to Charleston with one thing in mind: to tell Doug the marriage was over. They had driven to Charleston, picked up all of her things from the house, and left him a scathing note outlining all the reasons that she wanted to leave him. The note said how possessive and how abusive he was to her, specifically citing the incident involving the gun. She said it made her feel unsafe to be around him, especially with her unborn baby. At the end of it, she wrote how if he tried to go after her or win her back, that she would call the cops on him and report his abuse. This note seemed to be just the beginning of the end of their relationship, because after that, things between them just turned downright toxic. Ashley started going around telling people that she thought Doug was intentionally poisoning her and was trying to kill her. She even told people that she had her doubts about how his first wife died, saying that he probably poisoned her as well, and only used the, quote, undiagnosed heart condition as basically a cover-up story for murdering her. For most people, this would probably be enough to walk away from the marriage, but not Doug. He didn't want to give up. He tried to make things work. He told his friends that he loved Ashley, and in an attempt to win her back, he sent her hundreds of texts saying that he loved her. He begged her to reconsider and come back home. But Ashley didn't seem like she was in a forgiving mood. Instead, she followed through on her threats and called the police, saying that he had major anger issues and told them all about the gun incident. This phone call triggered an investigation by Child Protective Services. Since Doug was accused of firing a gun in front of his teenage daughter, they needed to come in and make sure that everything was okay at the house. CPS also had psychologists go to the house and perform a full psych evaluation on him to determine if he was dangerous. In the end, though, they didn't find any evidence suggesting that he was either abusive or dangerous toward his daughter, so they dropped the case, and he was officially cleared of any wrongdoing or child endangerment. Now, he might have escaped any trouble with CPS, but he had other problems coming his way. By the middle of October, Doug found himself struggling in more ways than one. His pregnant wife, Ashley, wanted a divorce, and running the dance company all by himself proved to be very challenging. So one day, he picked up the phone and called Ashley. He said he was turning the business over to new leaders, ones that had a lot more experience. But this phone call didn't make her very happy. This was supposed to be her business, and it was supposed to be successful. So on October 23rd, 2017, a lot of the dancers were called into a meeting, told to sign non-disclosure agreements, and fired. That day, more than half of the dancers were let go. Less than 48 hours later, Ashley took to social media, writing on the company's Facebook page that she was completely devastated by what happened under the new ownership, and that they destroyed all of the hard work that she put into the business. So that was it. Within just a matter of 3 months, the American National Ballet was done, practically out of business, and Doug was out more than $100,000 of his own money, which he invested into it. The relationship troubles didn't stop after the business was gone. In reality, it only got worse. She continued telling people that she thought he was poisoning her while she was pregnant, saying that they were both big tea drinkers, and she thought he was putting something in hers when he would bring it to her in bed because she didn't want to get up. However, Doug seemed to be oblivious to all of this and sent her a birthday present at the end of November 2017, which only fed her suspicions about him even more. She took the gift down to the police station where they tested it for hazardous materials, but all the tests came back negative. It was, in fact, just an ordinary birthday present. On top of the birthday gift, Ashley also sent her hair to an independent lab for testing to see if she had been poisoned. But the test results are a little unclear from what I could find. According to Ashley's lawyers, the hair samples showed a higher than normal level for aluminum, zinc, and other metals. But according to Doug's attorneys, they didn't. So we aren't really sure what the test results revealed, especially since none of her lab work while pregnant turned up anything suspicious. 3 weeks before the baby's due date, Ashley checked in to the Tampa General Hospital in Florida without letting Doug know. She told the doctors there that her unborn child had been exposed to heavy metals while in utero because her husband had poisoned her. She also said that he was physically abusive and held her prisoner back in Charleston and was now stalking her. So in order to protect both her and the baby, the hospital changed her name while she was there to Christina. And they also scheduled an emergency C-section to deliver the baby a few weeks early, just in case she really had been exposed to the heavy metals. Doug didn't find out that his daughter was born until almost a month later, in March of 2018. And when he finally did hear about it, it was nothing like he had imagined. Ashley had given the baby a name that they had never talked about, and when it came to the birth certificate, the baby didn't have Doug's last name. He wasn't even listed as her father. No one was. From that moment forward, Ashley wanted absolutely nothing to do with Doug, and she didn't want him to have any part in their daughter's life. She seemed to just want the baby to herself and didn't want a co-parent. When the baby was around 3 months old, Ashley and the baby spent 26 consecutive days of treatment in a facility with a hyperbaric chamber specifically designed to detox the body of heavy metals and other toxins. By the summer of 2018, Doug had taken Ashley to court because she hadn't allowed him to see their daughter. Her attorney argued that he shouldn't be allowed to spend any time with her because of the poisoning accusations. But after 2 full days of testimony, the judge rejected this claim, saying basically that there was no evidence of that happening. So Doug was granted visitation rights. And 2 days later, they met at the police station to exchange the baby. The handoff didn't go as expected. Instead of it being a heated exchange, it was actually really easy. In fact, Ashley was said to be super nice and super accommodating. She even suggested that the 3 of them should spend some time together, her, Doug, and the baby. Now, this came off as a complete surprise. They had just spent months and months fighting. They just went to court for a custody battle. She accused him of poisoning not only her, but also poisoning his first wife and killing her. She didn't put his name on the birth certificate. And now she was saying that they should all spend time together. It was just really, really strange. But maybe she had a change of heart. Doug was still the father of her baby, and they were still technically married. So Doug agreed and told Ashley that they should see each other and they should spend as much time together as possible. He even moved into an apartment nearby in Florida so that he could be closer to them. For a while, this arrangement seemed to work out. But by the summer of the following year, things were once again falling apart. In August 2019, Doug hired a private investigator after seeing an engagement ring on one of Ashley's fingers during one of these visits with their daughter. The PI came back and told Doug, yes, Ashley was seeing another guy. So in November of 2019, Doug officially filed for divorce. Right after that, Ashley went to the police station saying Doug was sexually abusing their baby on top of 100 other accusations. But once again, none of that was supported with any type of evidence, and Doug was cleared of all of it. Now, you might think this was finally the end of this toxic relationship. It wasn't. A few months later, Doug did something that surprised everyone. He told people that he and Ashley were going to try again to be a family and were relocating, this time to Maryland. People in Doug's life seemed to hold their breath after hearing this. They wanted him to be happy, but is it really possible to reconcile with someone who has basically accused you of sexually abusing your daughter? Well, then September 27th, 2020 happened. That Sunday night, Doug was at Ashley's mom, Alicia's house in Florida. They were getting everything packed up and moved into a U-Haul so that they could all head to Maryland to start their new lives together. While they got things ready, Alicia offered to take the baby on a walk to the park down the street, which meant that Doug and Ashley were alone in the house together. But just minutes after Ashley's mom and the baby left, a neighbor heard screams coming from the house and called 911. At the same time, Ashley walked to a different neighbor's house carrying her .45 caliber gun, saying that she shot Doug in self-defense. When the ambulance arrived, Doug was still breathing. He had been shot twice in the master bedroom, and we'll talk a lot more about that in just a moment. He was taken to the hospital, but died from his injuries about an hour later. Ashley wasn't immediately arrested because the police had to do their job. They had to investigate her claims of self-defense. But it didn't take long for them to have their doubts about her story. About a month later, she was officially charged with second-degree murder. Her bail was set at $100,000, but after posting it, she was freed until her trial and only required to wear an ankle monitor. Before the trial, her defense lawyers filed a motion for dismissal, citing Florida's Stand Your Ground law, which basically allows people to use force, including deadly force, in cases of self-defense. So that really became the question here. Did Ashley Benefield act in self-defense when she shot and killed her husband? Was she a victim of domestic violence, spending the last several years being tortured and poisoned by him? Or did she shoot Doug in cold blood? Well, based on the evidence her defense presented in the motion, the judge didn't think that this was an automatic case of self-defense, so he rejected the motion. Fast forward to July 27th, 2024, the first day of trial in Manatee County, Florida. The long-awaited Black Swan Murder was broadcast live on court TV for millions to watch as things unfolded. In a nutshell, the prosecution's case was this. Ashley wanted nothing to do with Doug anymore. She didn't want to co-parent or share her daughter with him. And all these accusations about abuse and poisoning were all a hoax. This case is about a woman who very early on in her pregnancy decided she wanted to be a single mother. Assistant Attorney General Suzanne O'Donnell said in her opening statement. And she did not want the father of this child to have any visitation, she continued, adding that everything she did from that point on was to obtain that goal, and she would stop at nothing to obtain that goal, end quote. The state said that Ashley didn't act in self-defense that night, and they had the forensic evidence to prove it. On the flip side, the defense that was led by defense attorney Neil Taylor characterized Ashley as a terrified victim of domestic violence and deceit. They didn't deny that Ashley shot and killed Doug, but they said she had no other choice. The evidence is going to show that Douglas Benefield was a very disturbed man, he told the jury. 30 years older than Ashley, he was obsessed with her, and he successfully portrayed himself as everything he was not in an effort to win her hand in marriage. Despite promoting himself as a religious and decent human being, Douglas Benefield was a manipulative, cunning, and abusive man who absolutely insisted on control, end quote. Let's start with the prosecution's case. Their biggest piece of evidence, at least in my opinion, was the medical examiner's testimony. Dr. Russell Vega was the one who performed Doug's autopsy. He's the chief medical examiner for the 12th District of Florida, which includes Manatee County. He's got over 25 years of experience and has performed over 4,000 autopsies as a medical examiner, and many of those autopsies involved gunshot wounds. This is what he testified to about Doug's autopsy. A total of 4 shots were fired, and Doug had been hit by 2 of them, one that went through his chest and a second one that went through his leg. Starting with the one that went through his chest. According to Dr. Vega, a bullet entered through the right side of Doug's chest, hit his 5th rib on the right, and then went through his right lung. After that, it went through the 10th bone of his spine, through the left lung, and the 10th rib, before ending up in the soft tissues of his back without making an exit wound. Based on the bullet's path of travel, it went right to left from front to back, horizontal without angling upward or downward. According to Dr. Vega, this first shot wasn't immediately fatal. It probably would have incapacitated him pretty quickly, but we don't know if it would have been immediate. The second shot went through Doug's right leg through his calf muscle area. This one was different than the first one because, unlike the chest gunshot, this one had an exit wound. After it went through his calf muscle, it exited out on the right side of his knee. But before it did, the bullet also went through part of his leg bone because he had multiple leg fractures. In neither one did Dr. Vega find any stippling marks on Doug's body, which is unburned gunpowder that creates a pattern on the target. This was an important piece of the prosecution's case because although Dr. Vega couldn't say exactly how far away Doug was from Ashley when she shot him, he would have had to have been at least 3 feet away, any closer than you'd expect to see these unburned gunpowder marks. So why was that important? Well, the prosecution used it to basically argue that if Doug was pretty far away from Ashley when she shot, then her life wasn't really in danger under the stand your ground rule. The state wanted the jury to interpret this evidence as basically, Doug probably wasn't that close to her. Another thing they wanted the jury to know was that Doug was either shot in the back or to his side. Now, the prosecution and defense went back and forth questioning Dr. Vega about the chest wound. Would it be a fair statement for me to say that for the chest shot, the weapon would have had to been pointed at his chest from the front? Asked the defense. Yes, Vega said, but it didn't enter the front of him. It entered through the side, said the prosecution. Yes, so the weapon did have to be in front of him, but even more so to the right side, Dr. Vega answered. Now, that's a little bit confusing, but based on Dr. Vega's testimony, the gun was likely pointed at him from the front, but at the time, Doug was turned to the side. He wasn't facing directly at Ashley. That's why Dr. Vega says that the bullet went through the right arm into his chest. So for prosecutors, that was all they needed to say Doug wasn't charging at her like she said that he was in order for this to be any type of stand your ground self-defense case. The bullet entered his side. On top of the 2 gunshot wounds, Dr. Vega also testified that Doug had another injury to the back of his head, a swollen and scraped bruise consistent with falling backward and hitting his head. Inside the master bedroom, there was a small piece of disturbed drywall that seemed to match Doug's head injury. But besides that, he didn't have any other injuries, none to his face or anywhere else. His toxicology also came back clean. No drugs or alcohol were in his system. Based on all of these findings at the autopsy, Dr. Vega ruled Doug's cause of death as a gunshot wound to the chest that caused perforation of the lungs with chest bleeding, and the manner of death as homicide. Digital forensic evidence also played a key role during the trial, mostly used by the prosecution to contradict Ashley's abuse claims. A Manatee County investigator with the Technical Services Unit who specializes in forensic analysis testified for the prosecution. He showed the jury text messages showing the couple making plans to visit Shelby Gardens and Doug sending morning Bible verses. Most of the messages showed them happy in the days and weeks leading up to the shooting. They even seemed excited about making the move together. According to the prosecution's digital forensic expert, none of them showed that she was in fear for her life or the victim that she claimed to be. The moment everyone waited for was, is Ashley going to take the stand in her own defense? And most people were surprised that she actually did. On the witness stand, she told the jury that she was afraid and that she thought Doug was going to kill her. She said she had no choice but to shoot him. She also described their roller coaster relationship from the day they met until the day she shot him. This is what she said happened on the day of the shooting. While preparing for the Maryland move, they got into an argument over whether they should continue packing. When Ashley said that she was exhausted and she didn't want to pack any more boxes, Doug became hostile and allegedly body checked her, slamming her shoulders into hers and nearly knocking her over. He stopped me. He grabbed me by my hand and yanked me back, she testified. He said, "What the F are you going to do?" I said, "I'm done and you need to leave right now," she testified. She said Doug struck her in the face, something that he had never done before. The punch left her with a swollen black eye that she said was documented in photographs taken by the authorities. She then ran to the master bedroom and grabbed her gun. Doug appeared in the master bedroom's doorway, she testified, and told her that she was done. Ashley said she raised the gun and told him to stop, but he moved in what she described as a fighting stance and then lunged at her. I started pulling the trigger, she testified. He kept coming at me. I was scared to death. I thought he was going to kill me. There was nowhere to go, she said. Her defense lawyers showed the jury photographs of both Ashley and Doug. Doug's photos were basically used to show how much physically bigger he was than she. And the ones of Ashley showed her with a black eye that her lawyers said was from when he hit her. It was ultimately an extremely emotional testimony. During most of it, Ashley was in tears, recalling the day of the shooting as well as her marriage. And throughout the entire thing, she stuck to her story. This was a clear case of self-defense, despite what the medical examiner said or the forensic evidence. After a week of testimony, the case was handed over to the jury, a group of 5 women and 1 male. They deliberated for 7 hours before returning to the Manatee County Court with a verdict. Ashley Benefield was found guilty of manslaughter with a firearm. They didn't believe her argument that this was self-defense. Following their decision, she was remanded to the custody of the Manatee County Sheriff's Office, and her $100,000 bond was revoked. But a sentencing hearing has yet to be scheduled. Doug's cousin, Tommy Benefield, described hearing officers placing Ashley back in handcuffs once the court session ended. The sound was as good as the sight, said Tommy, according to the Sarasota Herald Tribune. Doug's daughter Eva also made a statement to the press. Quote, "I apologize to all women who have gone through domestic violence situations," she said. "I think what Ashley was doing was unfair to them. They deserve justice, and I'm very happy that my dad got the justice he deserves." End quote. Because this is a very, very recent case, we'll have to wait and see what happens to Ashley Benefield with her sentence. She also has the right to appeal her conviction, which it sounds like she probably will do. But in the meantime, I want to hear your thoughts about her claims of self-defense. Do you think that she should have been found innocent and protected under Florida's Stand Your Ground rule? And what do you make of the medical examiner, Dr. Vega's testimony about where Doug Benefield was shot? Was he facing the side, or was he charging forward at her? Finally, what about her claims of abuse and poisoning? To share your thoughts on this week's episode, follow the show on Instagram and Facebook. To find out what I think about the case, sign up to become a patron at patreon.com/forensictales. After each episode, I release a bonus episode sharing my personal thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe to Forensic Tales so you don't miss an episode. We release a new episode every Monday. If you love the show, consider leaving us a positive review. You can also help support the show through Patreon. Thank you so much for joining me this week. Please join me next week. Until then, remember, not all stories have happy endings. Forensic Tales is a Rockefeller audio production. The show is written and produced by me, Courtney Fretwell Areola. For a small monthly contribution, you can help create new compelling cases for the show, help fund research, and assist with production and editing costs. For supporting the show, you'll become one of the first to listen to new ad-free episodes and gain access to exclusive content. To learn more, please visit patreon.com/forensictales. This week, we have 2 new Patreon supporters to thank, Birna M. and Olga R. Forensic Tales is a podcast made possible by our Patreon producers, Tony A., Christine B., Sherry A., Michael D., Nicola, Jerry M., Brian W., Megan G., Ureli, Jerry, Ann F., Ken S., Carol A., Luis B., and Marianne C. If you'd like to become a producer of the show, head over to our Patreon page, or send me an email at courtney@forensictales.com. For a complete list of sources used in this episode, please visit forensictales.com. Thank you for listening. I'll see you next week. Until then, remember, not all stories have happy endings.